The auctioneer's gavel came down before Tamaz could say a word. He was 11 years old, standing in the dirt yard of the Calvert's Ridge Resettlement Depot, and he had been told to stay quiet. His father had said it twice on the walk over. Don't make a scene. The colony owes 3 seasons of grain credit. This is how it works. Tamaz had nodded both times. He stopped nodding when the auctioneer pointed at Rue. She was in the second pen from the left, a rough collie, 2 years old, with a gold and white coat that had spent the last 18 months sleeping across the foot of Tamaz's bunk. She had her nose pressed through the fence wire. She was looking directly at him, tail moving in that slow, steady sweep she only used when she was certain of something. The buyer was a Veteran agricultural contractor named HFY, who ran a hydroponic operation 600 kilometers north across the Kasden Flats. He had paid for Rue in colony script, which settled 2/3 of the grain debt. He loaded her into a pressurized cargo crate before noon. Tamaz watched the transport lift off. Rue did not bark. She was still looking at him through the crate's mesh panel when the doors closed. His father put a hand on his shoulder. "She'll be fine," he said. "It's a good posting, warm indoors work." Tamaz said nothing. He counted the seconds until the transport disappeared into the overcast. On the 3rd morning after the sale, HFY sent a priority complaint to the Calvert's Ridge Colony Administration. The Earth animal had breached a Level 2 enclosure gate, a reinforced latch rated for livestock twice her mass, and was gone. No alarm had triggered. The Veteran contractor demanded a refund and filed a loose fauna report with the Kasden Transit Authority. The Transit Authority logged it, assigned it a reference number, and forwarded it to a Veteran duty officer named Kasden who handled animal-at-large cases on the Northern Flats. Kasden had never dealt with an Earth dog before. He pulled the intake file. It said, "Rough Collie, female domestic companion, classified agricultural support Tier 4, no threat rating." He noted the last confirmed location, the Cell Hydroponic Compound, 612 kilometers northeast of Calvert's Ridge, and opened a standard containment query. He expected to close it the same day. Animals did not simply walk out of reinforced agricultural compounds. Animals that somehow did exit did not then survive in the Kasden corridor, which had no food for anything that wasn't adapted to alkaline chemistry, no fresh water within 50 kilometers, and a ridge system in the middle that Veteran survey teams had mapped as unpassable on foot. He prepared the standard form: animal at large, presumed deceased, case to be closed pending owner refund processing. Then he checked the terrain scan between the compound and the colony settlement. He looked at it for a long time. The Kasden Flats were not flat. They were a 200-kilometer scrubland of salt-cracked alkaline soil, crossed by 3 unstable chemical runoff channels from the western processing plants, then a ridge system the settlers called the Bone Shelf, and finally 40 kilometers of low wetland drainage before the colony fence line. The whole corridor averaged 11 degrees Celsius and periodic chemical fog from the runoff channels. Nothing browsed there. Nothing denned there. The survey teams that crossed it did so in sealed ground vehicles with atmospheric filters. The distance from the hydroponic compound to Calvert's Ridge colony fence, measured in a straight line through that corridor, was 612 kilometers. Kasden looked at the terrain scan for a long time. Then he set down the standard closing form and did not file it. He wrote in his report instead, "Animal is at large in a corridor that no domesticated fauna should be able to cross. Recommend monitoring." He did not close the case. Tamaz found out about the escape on the 4th day, when one of the depot workers mentioned it to his father over the equipment manifest. "Heard the dog broke out of Cell's compound," the worker said. "Gone 3 days now. That terrain'll get her." His father had nodded and said something quiet and moved on down the row of equipment tags. Tamaz said nothing. He stayed very still. He did not trust his face at that moment, so he kept it pointed at the wall until the conversation ended. That night he sat on the edge of his bunk with his boots still on, and thought about the way Rue had looked at him through the crate mesh. That slow, certain tail sweep, and something tight settled into the center of his chest that felt less like hope and more like a promise he hadn't made yet. The depot worker had said the terrain would get her. He turned that sentence over and looked at it, and decided the depot worker did not know Rue. He started leaving the south gate unlatched at night. The gatekeeper noticed on the second night and relatched it. Tamaz unlatched it again the next morning and said nothing about it to anyone. He did not tell his father what he was doing. He did not tell anyone. He went to school. He did his share of the grain inventory. He ate supper and helped with the evening equipment check. At night, he sat by the south gate with a piece of rope looped through the latch, and he waited. He was 11 years old. He was very good at waiting when he needed to be. Krethvod's monitoring reports began arriving at the Kasden Transit Authority on Day 5 and continued for the next 6. Day 5. Thermal signature consistent with a medium-mass earth canid detected at Chemical Runoff Channel 2, crossing 0.3 kilometers south of the Eastern Processing Plant outflow. Animal moving southeast. Day 6. Same signature confirmed at Bone Shelf Base moving southeast. Gait regular. No apparent injury. Animal avoided 2 Vithran survey vehicle paths, both times detouring before reaching line of sight, not in response to them. Krethvod noted this detail and underlined it. The survey vehicles had been running silent. There had been no acoustic or visual signal for the animal to respond to. It had changed course before the vehicle paths were in range of any sensory detection the file's Tier 4 classification suggested it should have. Day 7. Signature located at Bone Shelf Midridge, elevation 340 meters. Animal is crossing at night using a route that avoids the 3 highest wind corridors. The route does not follow any mapped trail. Day 8. No contact. Possible shelter during heavy chemical fog event. Krethvod had spent that day rechecking the calibration on his thermal sensors, then checking the Day 7 data again, then sitting with the Day 6 note about the silent survey vehicles and reading it a third time. He had not filed the standard missing signal report. He had waited. Day 9. Signature resumed southeast of the Bone Shelf. Animal descended the ridge on the south face. Terrain there is rated Class 4 unstable, loose chemical salt crusts over subsurface drainage voids. Survey teams do not transit it on foot. Animal is crossing it at a diagonal, weight distributing across the crust with no apparent difficulty. Krethvod forwarded this report to his supervisor with a single addition in the subject line. Please read. Day 10. Animal located at the edge of the wetland drainage corridor, 14 kilometers north of Calvert's Ridge Colony fence. Moving southeast. Pace unchanged. A senior Vithran Transit Authority officer named Seville Dawn reviewed Krethvod's stack of reports that morning. She called him. "You've been tracking this animal for 6 days," she said. "7," Krethvod said. "Is it injured?" "No." "Is it posing a threat to settlements or infrastructure?" "No, it is avoiding infrastructure." "Then why is this file still open?" Krethvod was quiet for a moment. "Because it crossed the Bone Shelf on foot," he said. "Class 4 terrain, in chemical fog, at night. And it didn't cross at the standard survey route. It found a line that distributes weight across the salt crusts. That line isn't in any mapping database." Seville Dawn was quiet. "I want to see where it's going," Krethvod said. She did not close the case. On day 10, just before dawn, Tamaz was asleep with one hand through the unlatched south gate when something wet touched his knuckles. He was awake before he opened his eyes. She was there, coat thick with alkaline dust, paws cracked at the pads, a small chemical burn mark along her left flank where she had brushed something she couldn't avoid, but standing, tail moving in that slow, certain sweep. She pushed her nose into his palm and held it there. Tamaz did not speak. He pulled the gate open, and she walked through it with the same calm, deliberate gait she had always used, the same gait she used crossing the front room, or the yard, or apparently 600 kilometers of alien wilderness. And she sat down at his feet and leaned against his leg with her full weight, and he put both arms around her neck and stayed there. The alkaline dust that had caked into her coat smelled like nothing he recognized. Underneath it, she smelled like herself. He did not say anything for a long time. When his father found them at sunrise, Rue was lying across Tamaz's feet with her head up, watching the gate. His father stood in the doorway looking at the dust-white coat and the cracked pads and the burn on her flank and didn't say anything for a while either. 600 kilometers, his father finally said. He wasn't asking. 612, Tamaz said, and the bone shelf. His father crouched down, looked at Rue's paws, looked at the flank burn, and then looked at Tamaz. Something in his face had changed. He stood up without saying anything else and went to get the medical kit. Krethvad's final report read: Animal arrived at Calvert's Ridge Colony South Gate at approximately 04:20 on day 11. Total distance traveled, estimated 614 kilometers. Terrain crossed, alkaline scrubland chemical runoff corridor, bone shelf class 4 ridge wetland drainage section. Duration, 10 days. No injury requiring intervention. Animal navigated all terrain without mapping data. Animal located and returned to a specific residence within the colony. Not the colony intake pen, not the perimeter fence, not any supply structure. A specific structure, matching the home of the registered prior owner, colony child resident Tamaz Vila, age 11. He paused. He typed the next line carefully. This office is recommending that the Deathworld Fauna Classification Committee review the current Tier 4 agricultural support rating assigned to the Earth Rough Collie. The assigned rating reflects the animal's utility in an agricultural context. It does not reflect navigational capability, terrain adaptation, and this officer acknowledges that this is not a standard administrative category. What appears to be a directional objective that this animal maintained over a 10-day unassisted traverse of hostile terrain. The animal did not go to the nearest settlement. It did not go to a food source. It did not shelter in place. It navigated 600 kilometers of graded Class 1 through Class 4 terrain in chemical fog and returned to one specific 11-year-old child. There is no Tier 4 rating for that. He filed it under fauna reclassification pending and forwarded copies to the Earth Liaison Desk and the Calvert's Ridge Colony Administrator. Then he added one more note, which he knew was outside the standard format but filed anyway. The latch on the south gate was not broken. It was unlatched from the inside. The child had been leaving it open for 7 nights. He didn't know what to classify that either. He left it in the file and went home. Ovath Cell's refund request was denied on procedural grounds. The animal had not been lost. It had relocated, and no colony property had been damaged. He filed a secondary complaint. The Transit Authority forwarded it to the Earth Liaison Desk, where it sat for 4 days before an Earth Liaison officer named Dav Tors read it, pulled Krethvad's full report, and sent back a single line. We're familiar with this pattern. Recommend you don't purchase another one under the same circumstances. Ovath Cell did not file a third complaint. Rue's paws healed in 2 weeks. The veterinary tech at the colony clinic, a Thurvian woman named Eseth who specialized in earth animal care for the settler population, cleaned the pad cracks, treated the chemical burn, and made a notation in her own records that she later said she filed under things I am going to think about for a while. She had looked at the terrain map Tamaz's father brought in on a hand terminal, the one showing the route Krethvad's thermal scans had reconstructed. She had looked at it for approximately 20 seconds. Then she had looked at Rue, who was lying on the examination table with her chin on Tamaz's arm, watching the clinic door with those calm, direct eyes. Aseth had said, "How old is she?" "2," Tamaz said. The Thurvian vet had not said anything else. She finished the bandaging, wrote up her notes, and went very quiet in the particular way that meant something had shifted in her understanding of the world, and she was still working out where to put it. The burn on Rue's flank faded to a pale streak through the gold fur. Tamaz's father did not sell her again. He also did not say much about it, just kept finding small jobs that needed doing near wherever Rue happened to be sleeping. The grain debt was eventually cleared by other means. Nobody mentioned the sale. The reclassification came through 6 weeks later. Krethvad had submitted a supplemental report at week 2, and again at week 4 when the classification committee failed to respond, and a third time at week 5 with a note that said simply, "I am aware this is unusual. I am asking you to review it anyway." The classification committee had reviewed it 3 times, according to the internal memo that accompanied the final decision, because the first 2 reviewers had each independently requested a second opinion. The Rough Collie's official fauna classification was updated from Agricultural Support Tier 4 to Directional Companion, category unclassified, pending further framework. Tamaz read it once when his father left the notification up on the terminal and didn't really understand most of the administrative language. He understood the last line, which said the animal had demonstrated objective-directed navigation above any rated terrestrial or domesticated standard. He showed it to Rue. She was lying on his feet at the time. She looked up at him once with that slow, certain sweep of her tail and then put her chin back on his ankles. He decided that meant she had already known.